Shalom Aleichem. Welcome back, everyone, as we are preparing for Shabbat Parshat Korach. Today being Rosh Chodesh Tammuz, Chodesh Tov to everyone. Let us take a look together at this week's Parashah, and let's learn some very important lessons that we can take for ourselves throughout our journey of life. The Midrash tells us that in order for Korach to get supporters, Korach made a mockery out of Moshe Rabbeinu and Aharon HaKohen. Korach was telling over a story. He said that there was a poor widow who had two young orphans, and she owned a field. She wanted to plow the field, and Moshe Rabbeinu came to her and said, "Excuse me, but you can't plow with an ox and a donkey together. So you can't plow." She wanted to plant her field. Moshe Rabbeinu said, you can't plant klayim, you can't plant mixed seeds. She came out to cut her produce, and Moshe Rabbeinu told her, make sure to leave leket, shikha, and peah for the poor. And the Midrash continues in this fashion of how Korach was making a mockery of Moshe Rabbeinu. In this Midrash we see that Korach was mevazeh, he embarrassed or made fun of the mitzvah of tzedakah, the mitzvah leket, shikha, and peah, of leaving over produce for the poor. He made fun of the mitzvah of tzedakah. Shlomo HaMelech in Mishlei says, "V'tzedakah tetzil mimavet," that tzedakah saves a person from death. The Vilna Gaon says it's not just tzedakah, but any good deed. And not only that, the Vilna Gaon writes, there is nothing in this world that can help a person more than this, than doing a good deed, helping someone, providing with tzedakah. Rabbi Shlomo Levenstein Shlita explains that when Korach made fun of the mitzvah of tzedakah, he lost the ability for tzedakah to help him. This is the way he explains it. He says the Hebrew word for death is mavet, mem, vav, and a taf. The Hebrew word for money is me'ot, is mem, ayin, vav, and taf. He says that the whole difference is the ayin, is the letter ayin. That when a person looks, knows, and understands, and he sees that tzedakah is important, tzedakah can save a person, he puts the ayin into the word mavet, he gets me'ot, he gets to money, he gets saved. But if a person, hash shalom, is mizalezel, he makes fun of tzedakah, he doesn't see it as important, he pulls out his eye from tzedakah, he takes away the ayin, he loses his protection from tzedakah. And he says as follows in his sefer, one of the mistakes that Korach made was to make fun of the mitzvah of tzedakah. When he did so, he removed the protection of me'ot, of money, and turned it into mavet. He turned it into death. Rav Yaakov Hillel Shlita once came to give a shir, and his students realized he was very disturbed. He related the following story. There's a specific individual who donates a nice amount of money to the yeshiva every year. This man came from America, flew to Eretz Yisrael. He's here right now. I saw him and I told him, now that you're here, why don't you already go ahead and give the check that you always give the yeshiva now already? The man said, listen, when I get back to America, I'll take care of it. Rav Yaakov Hillel saw him again a few days later, said the same thing. And the man gave the same reply, when I get back to the U.S., I'll take care of it. Rav Yaakov Hillel said, today, we're just a few days later, and this individual called me. His voice choked up, and he was barely able to speak. I said to him, please, talk. And the man said, Rabbi, my son was killed in a holdup. Rav Yaakov Hillel said that he is sure that if the man would have listened to him and given tzedakah, his son would have been saved. And we talked about this in the past, how Hashem specifically sent us opportunities of tzedakah and chesed to do in order to provide us the protection. And a person needs to take that opportunity and use it. Otherwise, he's losing his own protection. If a person doesn't take tzedakah seriously, he's mizalzel tzedakah, mitzvah tzedakah, he can lose all his protection. Rebbetzin Kanievsky told the following story. She said, a few weeks after the tragic petira of the great Baal Tzedakah, Rav Ben Zion Donner, a group of people came to visit Rav Chaim Kanievsky Shlita. When they were there, they mentioned some of the great attributes about Rav Ben Zion, and how sad and terrible the loss was. Rav Chaim then turned to the people who were standing there and said to them, do you guys really think that this Gezerah was just nigzer now? Do you think that this decree for him to die was right now decreed? Not at all. You should know that the Gezerah was already nigzar, it was already decreed 20 years ago. And 20 years ago, his years on this world were already finished. But because of his unbelievable generosity, his chesed and tzedakah that he performs, they, in Shemayim, allowed him to live for 20 more years. The people who heard this got in touch with the people in Rav Donner's house. They wanted to confirm what Rabbi Kanievsky was telling them. And the almona, the widow, responded that she knows exactly what Rav Chaim Kanievsky is talking about. She said, 20 years ago, my husband was in a terrible car accident, and he came out unscratched. Everyone said it was an open miracle. There was no way, b'derech hateva, there's no way in the natural way for a human being could have made it out of such an accident alive. Tzedakah, like we said, does not only mean charity, it means any act of kindness. And it can save a person, it can give a person 20 more years to life. That's no joke. All because of the mitzvah of tzedakah. So much so that the Panovich Rav was once asked why he had an orphanage and a yeshiva. It's very hard to feed an orphanage and a yeshiva. Each one is its own endeavor. The Panovich Rav responded that although the yeshiva was his main life's work, however, one also needs the mitzvah of chesed. You need to have chesed to have success in building a yeshiva. And so we see how important tzedakah is. Korach was mizalzel tzedakah. He lost the protection that tzedakah might have given him. How important it is for us that when we see collections, when we see the chance to give tzedakah, that if we're going to give, we should be the first to give it. We shouldn't wait for other people to give. We shouldn't wait for the collector to come close to us. You come out and you give it. You never know if this opportunity is the one that's going to save you. It's going to save your spouse and save your family. Let's move on to another lesson from this week's parasha. The parasha tells us that when the earth opened up, v'chol Yisrael asher sivivoteihem nas'u lekolam, and all the Jews who were around these people ran away. Nas'u lekolam, they ran away from their cries. Ki amru pentiv la'enu ha'aretz, lest the earth swallows us up too. The people were scared. They heard the sounds and they ran away so they wouldn't have gotten swallowed also. What does this mean? That they heard the voice, that they fled from the Nas'u Likolam, whose voice, what cries? Usually when people are in pain, or people are crying, people watch, or people help. What he means here, the Rabbi Eliyahu Mizrahi explains that Kolam does not refer to the noise made by the people, but rather to the noise that was coming out of the ground. People ran the opposite direction because the sounds they had heard were unearthly terrifying. And it was clear to all those nearby that the wicked ones were being punished. And they didn't want to be involved in that punishment. So to ensure their safety, they ran away from the sinners, to show that they were righteous and took no part in Korach's plot. My Rosh Yeshiva of Torah Vedat, Rabbi Yisrael Reisman Shlita, tells the story of a Russian Jew who, like so many of his Jewish friends, began to take pride in his religion and a distinct interest in Judaism in the late 1960s, after the State of Israel's stunning victory in the Six-Day War. He joined a small group of fellow Jews who met in the basement of a refusnik and to study Talmud with a well-educated Talmud Chacham, which was a rarity in the Soviet Union era. The problem was that this man did not have a head for the class and rarely understood what was being studied. He would sit on a bench in the crowded basement among dozens of other newly inspired Russian Jews and fall asleep, his audible snores evoking the displeasure from others who were cramped and straining to hear the whispered words of the Rebbe. Interest in the secret class grew by the refusnik community, and in a very short time there was no space left. They didn't want to leave it. They didn't want to leave the basement to go somewhere else because the secret police can find them. It would be too much of a danger. A few younger members grumbled that this man was sleeping through the most of the shiur, taking up a valuable seat of someone else who can come and actually concentrate and actually do. And so a small group of these members decided they're going to approach this old Russian man and go straight to the point. Look, we know what you like coming here and you're proud to do for Judaism. But frankly, you sleep here each day and you sit on the bench and take away a valuable space from others who want to join the class. They cannot join the class because there's no room. Perhaps, they concluded, you can give up your seat so that someone else can come and really learn here. The people who brought it to his attention did not know what to expect. Would he get upset at them? Would he start yelling and screaming that he had earned the right to be there just like any of them, and they had no right to ask him leave? Or would he agree to the request? The man did not get upset. He smiled at these well-meaning young men and spoke to them. Let me tell you now a story, he said. During the Stalinist purges of 1937 and 1938, I was sitting in a cafe not far from a group of young men who were huddled together. Suddenly, agent of the People's Commissariat for Internal Affairs, the NKVD, burst in and began beating them mercilessly. Chaos ensued, and other secret police quickly barged in, arrested them, and hauled them away. But they were not done. All of a sudden, the secret policemen charged towards me and began striking me with their weapons. I was down on the floor pleading, I'm not with them, I don't know them. I'm a loyal member of the Communist Party and a servant of Comrade Stalin. I have nothing to do with them. Why are you beating me? Finally, the secret policeman backed off. But before leaving them, one of the NKVD agents turned towards me and said, with rage in his eyes, "Let me tell you something. We are beating you because if you sit with them, you are one of them." The older man now turned to these young refugees and said, "I sit here every day, even though I don't understand the class or the lesson of the Talmud. But I sit here for one simple reason. If I sit with them, I am one of them." We are who we associate with. In Parshat Korach, those around Korach's members and followers, when they saw the earth opening up, they said, "We have to flee from here and show that we're not with them. We're sitting here right next to them. If we're sitting here, then we're with them. We have to run away from them." And sometimes the opposite. Sometimes you need to go sit with certain people. You have to go sit with certain people to learn from them, to gain from them, to experience from them, to be influenced by them, instead of being like the members of Korach. Instead of being like the members of Korach or the people that were next to them, we have to be running away from such people and coming closer to Moshe Rabbeinu. I want to end off with a story that was told by Rav Druk in his Sefer in the Dorash Mordechai. Rav Druk is going on a lav that we have in this week's parasha, where the parasha tells us that a people cannot be like Korach and his followers. V'lo yeh keKorach v'cha'adato, the pasuk says. Not to be like Korach and his company. And so Rav Druk tells this amazing story. It happened in Yerushalayim many decades ago. There was a Jew who saved up money, and his entire fortune was in a gold Napoleon. A gold Napoleon, historically, was a fortune of a money. It was a coin which a person used. In those times, they didn't have banks that can just wire money. And so you took your fortune and you converted it to this coin that was called the Napoleon, the golden Napoleon. This Jew had such a coin. He also had a young son who heard that recently lollipops were introduced to Yerushalayim, and he wanted a lollipop. One day, he chanced upon his father's golden Napoleon. Not really recognizing how important it might be, to him it was just a coin. He went to Amram the grocer and bought a lollipop for the Napoleon. He came home with the lollipop. His parents saw him with the lollipop and said, "How did you get that?" He said, "I bought it." They asked, "How did you buy it?" He said, "Don't be mad with me, but I found this coin in this location. It was very golden." Right away the family said, "Oh no, the golden Napoleon." They went, they looked, they saw it was missing. They ran to Amram and asked him. They went to the grocer and they asked him, "Did you sell my son a lollipop?" He said, "Yes." "He gave you a golden Napoleon and you gave him a lollipop. How could you do this?" Amram said, "He didn't give me a golden Napoleon. He gave me a copper coin, which was the cost of the lollipop." The father said, "You're lying and you're a thief." They all ended up in Beit Din, and each side told the story. And Beit Din paskin that Amram was a modeh b'miktas, he admitted to part of it, and therefore he would have to swear that he didn't take it. Amram had no choice. He didn't have the money, a golden Napoleon's worth, to pay back, and so he swore that he never took the golden Napoleon. The city was in an uproar. They couldn't believe it, that Amram is a thief. He stole it. The town was in a tumult. His business went down. He was embarrassed. He was held to be a thief. Vayhi hayom, and it was a day. A number of months later, a gentleman, a young scholar, knocks on the door of this man who originally owned the Golden Napoleon and says that he has a confession to make. He says, a few months ago, I was desperate. I didn't have money to feed my family, and they were starving. I saw your son walking with a Golden Napoleon. And I first thought to myself, I should rescue the Napoleon and bring it back to who it belongs. But I had no idea that when I took the Napoleon from him, I traded it for a copper coin. The boy didn't realize the difference. And I really wanted to return it, but somehow I thought, my family is starving. Let me buy them food. I'll make back some money, and then I will return the Golden Napoleon the next day. But months passed, and now I finally realized, and I finally got together the money needed to return it to you. The father was dumbfounded. He realized that Amram the grocer was an honest man, and he had been put to shame for no reason. At the end of the story, Rav Druk says, and for those of you who heard this story, who do you think in Shemaim goes to Gehenna? Is it the owner of the Golden Napoleon? He didn't do nothing wrong. He went to Bet Din like he was supposed to. Was it Amram, the one who owned the grocery? Absolutely not. He's the victim in all this. So who goes to Gehenna? Is it a person who took the coin, the Napoleon coin, but he came back with it? He did tshuva. So who gets Gehenna for this whole story? You want to know what Rav Druk says who gets Gehenna? All the people in the town that made a tumult over a fight that's not theirs. The people who came and in some self-righteous flow defended who they thought to be the victim. They are those who go to Gehenna. They have nothing to do with it. And they're getting involved with it. People who get involved in machloket that they have no business being involved in. Or involved in the community, sometimes in yeshiva, sometimes in a shul, sometimes on the street in the business. It happens, people have disputes. People have disagreements. We are not to take a side. We don't get involved in machloket. These are the people who just get involved, nothing to do with it. They're getting involved in machloket. These are the people who go to Gehenna. In order to go to Gan Eden, a person has to stay away from machloket. And so, Rabotai, with these three lessons, the lesson of Tzedakah Tetzel Mimavet, Tzedakah can protect us from anything bad, and Tzedakah is anything that's good. Important to put that into place. It's important to remember that we are who we associate with, for better or for worse. And so let's make it better. And remember, not to get involved in machlokets that have nothing to do with us. And we should never take sides. It's up to people going to Bet Din and doing what they need to get done. And Be'ezat Hashem, if we follow this path and we follow these lessons, Hashem should bless us. Hashem should bless us with long life. Hashem should bless us with health. Be'ezat Hashem. And we should all see the yeshuot that we need. Anyone who needs shidduchim should have shidduchim. Everyone should have good parnasat tovah. Be'ezat Hashem. And with this, I would love to wish one and all a Shabbat Shalom.